Hey everyone, welcome back to the Filibusted. I'm Jason.
And I'm Michelle. Tonight, we're diving into a head-to-head look at the U.S. education system, from kindergarten all the way through college, compared with other countries across the world.
That's right. Despite our promises of opportunity and innovation, American education is lagging behind, leaving our future generations at a serious disadvantage.
We'll unpack the funding gaps, outdated policies, and systemic issues that are holding our schools back. It's time to ask, what does it really take to educate a nation in the 21st?
Buckle up as we call out the shortcomings and chart a path towards a more equitable education system.
Welcome to Degrees of Disadvantage. Let's get into it.
Well, I guess the most pertinent topic to start with is costs. Obviously, I've got a bachelor's degree. I attended a college that was out of state, but it was online. Strangely enough, I still ended up having to pay out of state tuition, which makes no sense because it's the internet. But I want to say I finished college about 44 grand in student loans. That is for a 4-year degree. I also had transfer credits from another school I had attended before I decided that I wasn't quite ready for college right when I got out of high school. Still ended up being $44,000 all online. I had to pay for my own books on top of that. So just my loans were $44,000. And that's on top of, I want to say I qualified for 2 Pell Grants. And I also got a wow, you're broke as fuck, let us give you a couple grand loan from Penn State that I'm also paying off. So I think cumulatively, my degree probably ran about 60 grand when all was said and done, which is insane, especially because it was all online and I didn't take advantage of literally any campus resources. And it seems that is consistent across all grades in the U.S. So if we look at the annual expenditure for K through 12 students, both public and private in U.S. dollars, the U.S. leads the pack at on average $15,500 per kid, which is 38% above the OECD average. Now, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, that is really high, considering, what goes into our education system and the fact that we have Elon Musk saying that we're stupid, that our school systems suck, and I think obviously that is subjective. Every state doesn't have the same standards. The state sets its own standards, what it's going to be, what it's going to consider like the material or subject matter that needs to be discussed and taught and then tested on every year for every grade level. And that can absolutely be a little bit different for every state. And then how they are tested on it too. And so if we look at that, the notoriously the red states are always towards the bottom. Blue states are at the top. A lot of that funding comes from not only federal, but also from property taxes. So even in red states, you're going to have schools that are higher up on that curve, that bell, than the ones that are in the rural areas because they're by larger, cities. Atlanta, you get into like Birmingham, Alabama, even down along the Gulf Coast, those schools are at an advantage even in a red state because property taxes fuel them. A lot of these areas they have where the property taxes portion that goes to education. So I know in the area we live in along the Gulf Coast is the schools here are higher up in the pecking order. I think there's like 13,000 some high schools across the U.S. and like the ones in our local area are like at least in the top 3,000, which is not bad considering our state is like 45th. 47th, like you can always like almost the tail end, slap fighting with Mississippi and
I was going to say our state is dumb as fuck, but you were much nicer in the language you used than I was.
Well, it's because the rural areas, they don't get the funding that these nicer areas get, and you can absolutely tell a huge difference in the schools that get funding. And it should be equal. Every child everywhere should have access the same level of education, and we shouldn't have this huge price tag slapped on it, especially this day and age with all the tools and all the education that's available online, all the data that's available online for free. What are we really investing in when it comes to these schools?
For real. Yeah, it's weird. It's not just disparities like in specific states, it's also within specific cities that you have vast disparities in property tax. Like I remember when I was going to high school, I went to private school. I don't hate me, but I went to private school. Wanted to go to public, couldn't go to private. I had a big issue with taking a full period of religion every day for 4 years. But there were schools in my old stomping grounds that were literally like 15 minutes from each other and wildly different outcomes for students because their funding was so different based on the property taxes in that specific area. It's wild to see schools that close geographically be so wildly different in quality of education and quality outcome. That completely blew my mind. And when you look at other nations, the kind of centralized funding for public schools. So one of the things I think is interesting, and I've long been enamored with the Finnish school system. They rate one of the highest in the world in the happiness index, which rates things like education, healthcare, work-life balance, all that stuff. Finland consistently rates near the top. And their K through 12 is entirely government funded. They may have the occasional private school, but they're very, very few and far between, if any at all. The students essentially get about 11 grand a year, which tracks. It's about average with the rest of the OECD stuff. But they're also nationally funded, so you don't get this huge disparity between the quality of education at schools in different geographical areas, which is awesome because that at least ensures some semblance of equality of opportunity, which is wild to me. And I think that's super, super important because that leads to a more consistent rate of successful outcomes than you do in a decentralized system like we have.
Yeah, for sure. And I know how they're funded is so weird here because I remember, the standardized testing. I know you probably didn't experience that in private school. Like Alabama has a standardized. Most states have standardized testing. Schools are funded on that. They're funded on a few things, and I believe it's kids coming to school, and being in school, and then how many there are, as well as like your testing, how well you do on testing, and then there's even any other extra income that comes in, like this area that has like a penny tax, so it's part of the sales tax. It's a penny tax, 1 penny on every dollar, and anytime you go and buy something. And that goes straight to the schools. And in these schools around here, they're able to build and buy and just expand as fast as this area is expanding. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I remember I went to school here, when I was young. And, there was just like one elementary school. And gosh, this area didn't even have a middle school. People went to the next city over for the middle school and high school. And I was in when they built the new middle schools when I went, it was like maybe a year old when I went to the middle school. And it was very interesting to kind of like transition through that. And like even like the city north of us, they didn't have a high school until the past like 15 years. I want to say when I was in high school, kids from that city were coming to our high school. So it's very interesting to see how much, small things like that, like a penny tax, can vastly improve an area. But yeah, it's crazy how much we spend, but we feel like we're still so far behind, like COVID hit and, all the kids were doing great. They were putting things on Google Classroom and using their Chromebooks. All the kids like third grade and up have Chromebooks. And everything was great. Everything was online. And then once the COVID restrictions were lifted, and this past like year and a half, they've gone back to using paper again. I'm like, why are you using funding for paper when we clearly had a way to do things online in the Chromebook to go back and spend dollars on paper again? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of doing schooling like you're still in the schoolhouse on the prairie or whatever, and your school marm is sitting there at the chalkboard and doing her thing. I think the fact that we lag behind from a technology standpoint is bad, and it's probably a side effect of how decentralized we are. Other countries don't seem to have this huge discrepancy in how their stuff is funded. And I think it gets even worse for us, keeping with funding, when you look at our higher education system. Our higher education system is completely out of control. It's even our state colleges, which are publicly funded, are like $9,000 on average per credit hour, I'm assuming. Or is that? No, that's probably $9,000 a year, I would imagine. Per credit hour, that would be insane. God, if I had that, my student loans would have been all the way here. And I should have a way higher paying job.
That's like per year, I think. Public, like state school, junior college, is a local college, community college. I think it's like $9,000 a year.
This is me regretting doing podcasts at 9:30 at night. This is me and my medication running out as the 12-hour pill kind of reaches its apex. Yeah, college is insane. So we already talked about I went to a state school. I just happened to be out of state, but online. I never set foot on my college campus because I also graduated during COVID. So they didn't do an in-person graduation. We just did it online, which I thought was cool. They tried to give the kids the experience. They always swore that they'd get us back once the pandemic was over, and they never did, which I feel kind of let down about. And so I owe, $65,000 or whatever it is for not graduating on campus, which is fine. One day I'll go there and I'll walk the campus and, maybe get a cheesesteak or something. So yeah, ours is way above the OECD average just from public schools. And then our private colleges are absolutely out of control. They run 30,000 to 40,000 plus. That's insane to me. I don't understand how we expect college graduates to contribute to the economy in any meaningful way when they are crushed under this specter of student loan.
Yeah. It's horrible. That was a topic of discussion about a year and a half ago with some friends of mine who are familiar, with it. They're closely tied with like the legal industry and stuff like that. And that was one of the big hangups, and there's a number of articles out there about like attorneys, especially that come out of these Ivy League schools that are maybe not from a very privileged family, and the amount of crushing debt they walk out with, and that, it takes a really long, like, you don't come out and you're not like, superstar attorney, or even if you're like a medical doctor, you're not like superstar, surgeon and all that. You still have to go through residency, as an attorney. You still have like this ramp up period, even after you go past the bar and all this. You essentially become a glorified paralegal for like a really long time. And you better hope you get like in a decent firm. You don't get laid off. Maybe you can make junior partner. Most of them end up in their 40s and 50s before they really start making it. And that's after they're working 60, 70 hours a week, like having, almost no billable hours. Like it's pretty grueling. And even, corporate America, people come out, with a bachelor's. Now they want bachelor's and masters, and our universities are just taking advantage of that. I want to say it's around like $12,000 a year. Last time I did the math, I know you did some math too, but it was if you stayed on campus, like stayed in the dorms and like took advantage, because God, that's probably going to be cheaper than renting an apartment nowadays. Remember when that was cheaper than staying on campus? It's like $12,000 a year just for a bachelor's at like a University of Alabama and Auburn, just a normal general school. And all that. And once upon a time, going to school online was cheaper. I went to OSU back in the early 2000s, and Oklahoma State University, not Ohio, Oklahoma State University. And I went to one of their satellite schools out in the OKC, and I actually took their class online. Like, it was so funny. The class was recorded and then played on like a public cable channel. It was very interesting. I had to watch it, but all my tests, I had a portal that I logged into, and it was so much cheaper and I didn't have to like fight traffic from one side of the city to the other to get down to the satellite campus and try to make it into class and stuff like that after work. So it was nice. It was nice being able to do that from the comfort of my home and everything, but it was cheaper. Like, it was a little bit cheaper than actually going to the main campus and staying there. And I had my own apartment and stuff like that. And I know I did not put myself that much in debt. Like I think my associate was like maybe a couple grand. It wasn't that bad. But, part of the extra costs they they almost have you do redundant classes. I remember that. I remember looking at a lot of the stuff going, I took this in high school. Why am I taking just a renamed version of this? Is this really like, do I actually need this again for business administration? I just got out of high school like a year and a half ago. Why do I need this class again? It was really silly when I started looking at the syllabus, like, why am I paying for this? For you to give me something I got for free in high school.
Well, don't go back as an adult student, because then they will make you take a placement test in math to see if you can take college math, which petrified me because I haven't done any type of math in forever. Having to test out for like to skip, I don't know what it was, like math 101 or whatever, like 2 plus 2 is in fact 4. I had to pass that test before I could take the actual required math courses for my degree that has almost nothing to do with math, which is wild. And you and I have talked about that before. I also am not a fan of all the redundant classes. I feel like I would have gotten much more value out of college because I majored in a technical field. If I could have taken more technical courses in place of like American history, psychology, whatever else I took, I can't even remember at this point because I was barely paying attention, because I wasn't interested in that stuff and it wasn't going to help me in my chosen career. And I just kind of pencil whipped everything because it's all it felt like busy work. It felt like I was back in high school again, except I was paying $545 a credit hour for the privilege of doing it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's insane.
It's like they add on all these extra classes that aren't really necessary anyway, just to make sure they can eke out every damn dime. But it's redundant stuff, and it's like, okay, I don't mind you filling it up with classes. It's 4 years. Or 2 years for associate, 4 years for bachelor's. But at least let me pay for classes that are relevant to what industry I'm going into. I don't need some of these things for business administration, for accounting. Like, yes, I could see accounting having a bunch of different math, and stuff like that. Business administration, more like marketing and that side of it, and like public speaking and stuff like that, and maybe even a little bit of psychology, only because business administration, you maybe management and stuff like that, and you'll have that would be helpful. But
you're going to be working with all those psychopathic CEOs, obviously.
I know.
Understanding the psychology of a psychopath is important.
Yeah. But if we compare what we pay to other countries like Germany. Germany has no tuition, like their colleges are free. Like, and same with Finland, right?
Yeah, state funded public system, and Finland is also state funded. Yeah, and the crazy thing about Finland that I found interesting. So not only is the bachelor's programs, or what we would refer to typically as undergrad, that's free if you're Finnish. If you're a Finnish citizen, your bachelor's is completely free. For international students, they still offer it, but there is a cost. But the master's programs are free for everybody.
Wow. Yeah.
Blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to me because you would think that you'd want an educated public, right? Because education would drive, the economy, because people would be
people
informed.
Talking about Jewish space lasers.
Injecting bleach, taking ivermectin, all
sucking down that anti-parasitic. Give me that ivermectin, brother.
Yes, that right there. Crazy as it sounds, you would think that an educated public, and all that. And that's something I always prescribe to. So where you have your bachelor's, I kind of ended with my associates, but I like getting small things. Like, I like getting certificates for learning a new skills here, new skills there, and stuff like that, because formal education is a money sink. It's just such for me, it feels like such a waste. It's this piece of paper that says, oh, I took history 3, world geography, out of high school, and I took it in college again. Yay. Look how smart I must be. I test well. Versus,
I successfully completed 178 credit hours.
Exactly. Like that's all it really is. And I paid out the wazoo for it. It's a glorified way to say, hey, I'm in a lot of fucking debt. And here, like me, when I come up with a certificate, yeah, I may have come out like $500-600, but guess what? Now I have a certificate and not thousands of dollars in debt, and I have a skill for it. I have something that says I am actually educated on this topic here, and then I get to pick and choose and piecemeal what I am certified on. You don't get a certificate if you just go to a college and take maybe like a little course, unless it's specifically certified, but like you wouldn't get that for like taking one of their English courses. And now certified in
what's
English
funny?
too.
I'm glad you brought that up. One of the senior leaders at my company, I was peeping on his LinkedIn one day, and I noticed that he had a something I'd never seen before. I think it was called a general education degree, I think, or something like that. So I had to look it up because I had never heard of such a thing. Because I feel like I took a lot of general education classes, but I got a very specific degree. And what was it called? Was it Gen Ed? But it's some kind of degree that doesn't limit you to a specific field. Integrated studies. That's what it's called.
Well,
It's
so
a
you don't have
bachelor.
like a set course path to say you got this type of degree.
Exactly. You get they call it an interdisciplinary bachelor's degree. It's offered by several universities, and you basically choose courses from a variety of subjects, including business, liberal arts, social sciences, and technology. And you can design a customized course of study that fits their career and educational goals. So my question is, why can't I fucking do that with my
and still
actual
get
degree?
this. Yeah, exactly.
Why can't I go get an IST degree and be like, all right, I want to take cybersecurity 401. I want to take intro to C#. I want to take fucking whatever other technology courses you can remember or you can think of. Why can't I craft a degree plan that's going to follow my chosen career path? But these guys picking this fucking integrated studies degree can fucking pick whatever they want and end up with the exact same degree as I have with a bachelor's. It's crazy to me. And in my experience, like people are going to look at integrated studies and be like, oh, what did you study in college? And they'll be like, oh, just fucking whatever I wrote down on my fucking syllabus. I took English 7 times and I graduated. How does that showcase like your background or your ability to do different things? Because most people aren't putting all that shit down in a resume. Like some resumes, you'll see people write like relevant coursework, but when you're going for a very specific field, I took English 303 and psychology 405 and statistics using R 304 and like what the fuck?
It's pretty crazy to me. And then what really drives this too in the price up is that now they require it. They require a bachelor's even on entry level jobs. And entry level, by the way, because I've seen it online, a couple people like, that just means that's an entry into the company. You're exactly right. It also means it's a low level job that's supposed to be pretty unskilled. So like when they're hiring for like T1 frontline, and then once you have a bachelor's degree,
They don't want to pay me like $20 an hour. I'm like, you can fuck all the way off.
Yeah. They want to pay you $20 an hour, and you owe you have a $60,000 school loan waiting on you. No. Yeah, and it's crazy. And yes, there are plenty of companies out there. Go look at, and they'll put in parentheses, relative, like 5-6 years of experience. Well, if somebody's coming straight out of college, they don't have that 5-6 years of experience, and maybe they only have an associate.
The job without the experience when you need the experience to get the job.
Exactly. And most of these fly-by-night schools that you see, these rip-off ones, they're only an associate. They're not a bachelor's. So you come out, you owe them $30,000-$40,000. Yeah, it's and you can't even get a job because you only technically have an associate's, and now you don't have the 5-6 years of experience. So it's crazy to me. But yeah, I mean, a lot of other countries have done it correctly. And once again, that is the federal side of it, the national side of it, spending its money wisely. So the citizens money wisely and investing back in from the bottom up. And it does. Katie Porter, I think, did a great, was it like a year and a half ago? She's talking about that hippo tooth bitch from the Heritage Foundation. I can never remember her name.
Beaver faced, buck toothed. Yeah, I fucking hate that.
Yeah, she was talking with, she had her whiteboard out, and she was talking about how every $5 we invest into like Head Start, we get like almost was it double, triple the return on it. It was really crazy.
Yep.
It was a great ROI on investing into the younger generation, how much that gives back and especially for lower income families. And what a relief that gives considering how much daycare is. And then getting up into college, it's just been allowed to run rampant and free and be different if there for a short period of time. I would say like the 80s through like maybe the early 2000s, you didn't have to go to college. You could still get a good job and you could still work your way up through like middle to high management with absolutely no education. Like I'm talking about like you could have dropped out of high school, had no GED, nothing, and still made your way up from the bottom to the top, pushing the broom around as a janitor to like CEO of the company. Nobody would have batted an eye. But all of a sudden was about the time the economy crashed in like 2008, 2007, 2008. And all of a sudden, when nobody had a job and these companies figured out, oh crap, there's people with like bachelors and stuff. Oh, we need a bachelor's on this stuff. And that's all they hired for like $10 an hour. That's when it got out of hand. And all of a sudden it was absolutely required. You had to go to college. All of a sudden, all the jobs, they had a minimum of an associate's on it. And then all of a sudden it jumped up to a bachelor's. And now it's crazy. And they are driving the cost just as much as, our government mishandling and not being bought into funding our children for our future.
Yeah, they want them dumb and manipulative. And that kind of leads in to our next topic, quality and outcomes. Now, there's a couple of international tests that they take to kind of measure global education. They do the PISA and the TIMSS test. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
PISA is the OECD's Program for International Student Assessment. That tests 15-year-olds in reading, math, science every 3 years. The TIMSS is the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, which tests 4th and 8th graders. So that's kind of the global benchmark for student learning. Now, the latest rounds that I could find were 2018 for PISA and TIMSS was 2019. Asian and Northern European countries basically curb stomped everybody. Singapore and China just basically kicked everybody's fucking teeth in. The 2018 PISA, Beijing, Shanghai, Jiangsu, and Zhejiang provinces in China scored 591 in math, 555 in reading, highest in the world, bar none. Singapore was just behind them. And then Finland, of course, my favorite, and Canada, also ranked among the best. Finland scored 520 in reading, which was third. High in science at 522. Math was a bit lower at 507, but still above the OECD average. Canada did very well, of course. And then Japan and Estonia, also a strong performer, which kind of surprised me. Maybe because Estonia is just kind of fun to say. But they hit near the top. Now, the U.S., they're kind of hard to interpret. So the 15-year-olds did pretty well in reading. They did above the OECD average. They got a 505 in reading. OECD average was 487. Got a 502 in science, average was 489, and a 478 in math versus a 489 average. That put us to a really weird discrepancy on our rankings with 8th place in reading, 11th in science, but only 30 in math out of 78 participating systems. Now that's embarrassing. And we have consistently performed poorly in math. And you and I are both old enough to remember how we learned math when we were kids versus how they're teaching it now. I have looked at the new math, and as a grown-up, I found it hard to understand. Now, once you talk it out and you kind of realize that's how you do math in your head anyway, it's not that bad. But I think they did that in an effort to pull these math scores up. But I think part of our problem, specifically around elementary school, do you remember when No Child Left Behind came out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think conceptually, I think that was a good idea. But I think instead of lifting everybody up, I think it had the opposite effect. I think it drug everybody down because teachers they started to take the tests because they were so dependent on funding and so dependent on positive outcomes with all these tests. And they stopped teaching kids things like critical thinking skills and, how to interpret some of the things that they're learning and the broader concepts behind the subjects they're learning. And I think they lost sight of all that.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with the new math. So you're right on the fact that it is how you do math in your head. So if you take, like 10 times 100. Somebody's, that's very simple. You just add the zero, then maybe it's like 10 times, 15. You're going to do 10 times 10 is 100, then 10 times 5 is 50, it's 150. And then obviously you start adding, odd numbers in there. It's a little bit harder, but that's normally how most people do it, especially like me. I do percentages like that in my head, and I take my
we
whole
learn
numbers
tricks.
and divide it. Yeah. And then that's how you do math in your head. And I absolutely agree with that. But, there's pros and cons to No Child Left Behind. That was really to kind of push that you can't just like ignore somebody who's failing. You have to address it. However, they continually lack to give the children tools. So like in, your blue states that do score higher, because they're funded well. It's almost like the state, knowing how to appropriate funds and stuff like that. Take Alabama for a really good example. All the way down at the bottom of that list. Last time Meemaw was
That's a
given a
bad
chance.
example of a
Yeah.
state properly funding.
No. She's a good example in idiocy and why you don't
fantastic
put it.
example of what not to do.
Of why No Child Left Behind has failed historically in red states. Is last time that dingbat was given any type of choice, literally a button that says give teachers a raise or invest in a water park in the middle of nowhere, what button do you think she pushed?
I'm going to go with give teachers more money.
You'd be wrong. Absolutely incorrect. Yeah.
Common sense fails me again.
Exactly. So like they're not always historically the best, and it takes funding. You have to have the right resources available. You have to have, well-paid teachers and stuff like that to make these types of initiatives actually work. It's no different than having policies and procedures at your company and then nobody actually buys into them. You don't have adoption on them for those policies and procedures. On paper, it looks really pretty, but is anybody actually applying it? Have they done these things? And you're absolutely right. They stopped teaching and it stopped being fun and interactive. At least that's how it was when I was in school. And it became very robotic, and they taught you only the things you needed to do to pass all the tests. That's it. There was no like imagination, thinking outside the box, getting creative or anything else like that. It was just very structured. Here's how you pass this test so we can get funding. And I remember how serious that was.
Yeah, I feel like ours aren't even funded. Like, we live in a district with a pay tax, which I think is great. I think that's allowed this particular county to, I think our COVID prep was fantastic. Like, they did an amazing job. For the fact that we didn't really close our schools down, I don't remember kids coming home with COVID at all. Like, they did a damn good job prepping all the filtration systems, making sure that they were sanitized, making sure they had all the stuff to keep the desks clean, all that shit. Make sure kids aren't walking around licking doorknobs. They did a really good job with their COVID prep. I will say, as much as the state can piss me off sometimes.
Do you not remember them children bringing home COVID to me more than once?
I am immune or asymptomatic, so no, I don't.
Okay.
Well, I don't think they got it from school, though.
Yeah, they did. They don't go anywhere else. So they brought home COVID to me many times.
I've memory hold it. I will say they didn't have any big outbreaks at school then. I guess I'll qualify that statement. I don't remember like the teacher calling and being like, hey, like 16 kids are out with COVID right now, and we're
because they came in emails you didn't get. That's why.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah, I know. I would get the rolling emails. It'd be like, all right, we got 20 cases of COVID, because when they bring it home, remember, we had to stay home They had to stay home mandatory 10 days. And especially if they tested positive or anything else like that. Heck, if they had like a sniffle, it was like, stay home and you do your work from the computer. And then that's because it was relief at the schools where attendance wasn't, because that's the other side of it. It's not just testing, it's attendance too. It's why they have, they'll talk a lot of game. Oh, kids, if they miss more than 10 days of school, then they've missed so much, blah, blah, blah. That's shenanigans. That might have been true, during our time at school, because we didn't have a Google Classroom. We didn't have the internet in the same capacity that they have now. You couldn't learn the type of things, like usually if your parents had encyclopedias, they were like 15 years old, very outdated. So they didn't have the same access to data that the children do now. But yeah, the attendance is a big thing. And that's why you get those threatening letters if your kid, at like the sixth time they're out of school, even excused, where they're like, we're going to pull you in front of the school board if they get up any higher, and you're going to have to explain to us, and they may have to repeat the year, which I find absolutely abhorrent, especially if your child has good grades. Yeah, like that's part of that no child left behind, but that's the poor implementation of it and how they dole out money versus doing it the right way.
No, and I got a soapbox of it. I fucking hate perfect attendance awards. I think it's bullshit. If kids are sick, they need to fucking stay home. Don't fucking send your snotty ass fucking coughing in your mouth kid get my kid sick. And I'm not mad at the parents. I'm mad at these fucking corporations that don't give people sick time.
Yeah, they don't see
they got to figure something out
people.
Because everybody's paying $800 for fucking bird flu ridden eggs. And Bobby Kennedy hasn't sent out his anus crystals yet, so we're all going to get it. And if your fucking egg-eating kid gets it, don't give it to my fucking non-egg-eating kid because he doesn't like the texture. Fucking keep him home. But you can't because you have no fucking sick time because you just got fucking bird flu. And now your fucking kid's got bird flu. And
or you're part-time
at
Walmart and or you're part-time in any big box and they don't give benefits.
No, and you don't have a union to tell your fucking boss to fucking eat a bag of dicks.
Yeah.
Which I don't think unions actually say that, but
they need
in
to.
Spirit, they tell them to eat a bag of dicks, but they do it professionally, unlike myself, who just says eat the dicks, eat all of the dicks. But yeah, I don't like perfect attendance awards. I think it's bullshit. It encourages parents to send fucking Ebola monkey children to work. The kid's like the monkey from Outbreak, for Christ's sake. Like, don't let him anywhere near my kid. He's bleeding from his eyeballs. Just let him stay home or go to the fucking hospital, please.
Yes, yeah. No, and you're right, and that doesn't actually help either because, kids that are sick and if their parents give them cough medicine and it's test day, guess who's not going to test very well? When they're tired because they're getting up at 5:30 in the morning because their bus comes at like 6:30 in the morning because for whatever reason coughing. We have decided, we have decided that about 4 or 5 years old, now it's time to live like an adult and be out of the house from 6-7 o'clock in the morning until like 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. And they don't they don't get an hour lunch either. They get
you got to teach them
20 minutes. They get 20-minute lunch. Like by the time they march the little ribbons out of this classroom, get in the lunch line, get their tray, go sit down. You're already 10 minutes into your lunchtime. And then you get like another like 15 minutes. They're eating like prisoners, just shoveling that stuff in their mouth. Because I've volunteered. I've done the, let your teacher have a lunch break, from the lunchroom and clean ketchup off the preschoolers are my favorite. Can you open this for me? Yeah,
you
sticky,
have to tell,
but fantastic. But
you have to tell.
Yeah,
I have to tell little Johnny at an early age that for the rest of his life, he's going to be spending 8 hours a day building capital for somebody else for a less than living wage.
I mean, I feel like at this point, they're just pumping out those little worksheets all day long, and
it's
just like
the earlier you indoctrinate them and get them to accept that, the less chance of a revolutionary uprising later on in life that's going to get your head sliced off with a guillotine.
I guess. Shit. But yeah, they get them out, and these kids, they're outside, they're getting on the bus at like anywhere from 6:30 in the morning. And I'm dead serious because my eldest is getting on the bus at like 6:40 in the morning. So he was down at the bus stop almost like 6:35. And it until, and he doesn't, and of course, first to be picked up, last to be dropped off. And it's almost 4 o'clock when he rolls into the door. And our bus stop's just right around the corner. So it's not like it takes him a while to get home. And it's crazy to me that we have, and I remember growing up because I happened to be on a bus that came super early in the morning and showed up late. It was one of the last stops. And so I lived that life, and it is exhausting at that age. You get home and you're just kind of like numb. And then, at least the kids now don't really have homework. I will say that is a
Yeah,
big change. I
fuck
remember when
homework.
I would come home, like, we would have so much homework. It would be insane. And we had, 7 subjects during the day. And so I'd have to bring home my backpack. I mean, because they don't have books anymore. At least our schools don't. They have their Chromebooks, and everything they do is like online, at least that portion of it, outside all the worksheets and stuff. And I had a backpack. I mean, it was at least a good 20, 30 pounds. And it was horrible. And I was exhausted when I came home. And then having to like de-stress from the day because kids are animals. It does not change all the way through high school. They're just animals, and
Fucking
and
animals.
then try to like go back in for another 2-3 hours, and it was like a mental block. And I love education. I want no one here, like when I talk about I like to be certified, like I am constantly getting certified in something, like all over all kinds of industries. Like I'm all over the place because I like education. What I don't like is that level of indoctrination at that level, and what, there's a school that, there's maybe it is the Finnish. I know I want to say it's maybe the Netherlands or something like that. They don't go to school all day. They go like
No, it's
9:30, 10 o'clock
Finland.
until like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's it.
5 hour day. 9 to
Yeah.
9:45 to about 5 hours, for about 5 hours.
Yeah.
They're out by
And
two,
yet
essentially.
they test so much higher because the kids are allowed to sleep. They're allowed to get all their sleep. They're allowed to get up. They're allowed to wake up. Their body rhythms are going. They are able to spend time with their family, and then they leave the house for a short break, and then they come on home. And it's nothing crazy, but we have insisted that we have to live this like 20-hour, a day life cycle with these kids in school, and it's not working. And so, yeah, it's absolutely, the outcomes are horrible. And what if you have your like Finland's smallest gap between the highest and lowest performing students, like they have the smallest gap between the highest and lowest. Like, so they don't have like somebody on, like a large portion of kids at like 98%, and then like a small portion of kids like at 50%. They will have a smaller gap. Instead of like a 50-point spread, they have what, like just, few point spread.
Well, it's because everybody gets the same allocation for education. So it's every kid gets $11,000 or whatever they spend on primary education. With ours, since it's all based on property tax, if you grew unlucky in life and you were born to a less well-off family, you are going to start with a poor education or a poor quality of education.
Yeah.
Because your randomness of chance got you born in less than ideal circumstances from a socioeconomic standpoint, and it's nothing
Yeah.
you did, and it's not your fault. It's just the system isn't designed to lift you up. It's designed to put you into these lower wage jobs that obviously fulfill a need in society, or we wouldn't have those jobs anyway. And there's nothing wrong with having those jobs, but it entrenches people in poverty down the road.
I'd be interested to find out what Finland's what they're doing, like how many kids per teacher they have. Like I know class sizes got a lot smaller. So like when I was in school, God, they would jam like 33. Sometimes there'd be 36 of us in a classroom. Like I mean, it's desks like slammed up against each other. You could not like move your elbows without hitting another person. These are small classrooms, and you're just kind of jammed in there with 30 plus kids. Now it's maybe like 18, and then people just need to realize too that that's from federal funding, by the way. That federal funding that comes down when you walk into your kid's classroom and there's not 33, 36 kids in there. There's only like 17, 18, maybe 20. That comes from federal funding. Yeah. And so when as that's being stripped away, just understand is your kid continues to go to public school, that all the local funding, all the sales tax in the world is not going to help when that money goes away, and those classrooms are going to get a lot tighter, and they're a lot bigger really fast because there's going to be far less resources. So teachers are probably going to be let go so they can continue operating appropriately. Hell, in rural areas, you'll probably have one teacher who's teaching like almost every grade, and trying to help a high schooler while she's taking care of a preschooler.
Yeah, that's another thing that bothers me about public school. And this is kind of tangentially related to federal funding, but I feel like the big myth when I was growing up was, oh, you pay tuition for private school, but public school is free. But if that's the case, why is it that every time my kids start school every year, it's like $600 fucking dollars per kid in supplies we need to buy?
Yeah, it's definitely not
And then
free.
throughout the year, the teacher's got to beg for other shit. Like, why is my kid's education person having to beg for classroom supplies like fucking tissue paper?
Yeah, well, it's because we don't spend our money correctly. I mean, think about how much money is devoted to all these security systems because people can't understand that the Second Amendment is not there for people to be able to go buy rifle or automatic rifles at Walmart on their lunch break. It is there just to
Meemaw Ivy would beg to differ.
I know, right? Like there comes a point where you don't need a grenade launcher. I mean, so the fact that we have had to since Columbine, we've had to have all these we have school shootings consistently. You have to pay for now. You have to pay for city resource officers. That's what they call them here, to come stand in the school. They have to have all these locking mechanisms on things. Heck, the high school now has it looks like a jail. Like I do not kid here. There is now a gate, like a 10-foot gate. It looks like it's a border wall almost between a portion of the school where you could walk through and go into one of the buildings because those doors aren't locked and it's where the kids walk through, from one building to another. But I'm like, that wasn't there even like a year and a half ago. And that stuff costs money. It's not cheap. They have to keep up with it. And that's where our dollars are going now. So that cost is not going back to the kids anymore. It's going for this veneer of safety that we have because we won't let go of something else. And that's what some of these other countries do not have a problem with. You can own a gun in a lot of those countries. What you can't do is go to Walmart and buy an assault rifle on your lunch break.
That's called freedom, brother. We got freedom.
Yeah, well, freedom has a price, and it's killing our kids, both figuratively and literally.
You're
Both,
ignoring the
yeah.
economic benefits of gun ownership because I will tell you, ever since all these student shootings have started, we have a brand new burgeoning industry of backpacks lined with Kevlar. Those people never would have been job creators if we weren't murdering students in school. Jesus Christ, I can't even say that with a straight face.
I know. We think it's just going to get any better. We are sadly fucking mistaken, and it's so easy. And, I talk to I'm talking to the parents right now out there. Just be mindful of what your kids are looking at online, like a lot of these memes and stuff like that. A lot of the trad stuff, there's so many degrees to literally white nationalism. It's absolutely insane. Like one couple likes on TikTok, and all of a sudden you're getting red pilled, and you're part of Nick Fuentes' Groiper group. Like had to put a lot down on my oldest his social media, only for the sheer fact that there's so much going on. There's so much subliminal stuff in there, and I'm talking like Nazi stuff in there. That you just have to be very careful that they don't normalize that kind of iconery. So they're not consistently looking at that stuff and going, oh, okay, this is normal. This is just a meme. This isn't bad. This isn't a Nazi. Blah blah blah. Yes, it is. When you see stuff like that, yes, it is. And I am talking about like the SS bolts. Using the same color schemes and flags and layout as like the actual Nazi flag and stuff like that in some of these memes. And I just led to a deeper discussion and just making sure that they're safe online and they're not looking at stuff like that and thinking it's funny or toxic masculinity. That is actually a thing. It's not just about being a man. Talk to them about what it is about being a man, like what makes a man, and from a female's perspective, that women aren't there looking for this kind of stuff. So that's my little soapboxes. Parents, just be aware, don't you may want to feel like that's their business or you're giving them some time and stuff like that. No, it's better to address it now and let them kind of like feel it out. And then you have good discussions around it versus trying to hide it from them or anything else like that. But I digress.
That's okay. let's look at graduation rates. So
Boy.
the US has actually improved a little bit, surprisingly. I remember when I was younger, maybe even when I was in high school, the US was constantly getting shit on because everybody was dropping out of high school. People fucking hated it. GEDs got super, super popular. And this was back when the GED was super, super easy. So there was no incentive to stay in school when you could
Yeah, it was
just
eighth
kind of
grade
pencil
level.
whip. Yeah, eighth grade level equivalency test. And I know some people who could not pass it multiple times. I'm just throwing that out there, not throwing any shade, but you fucking know who you are. And I hope you're listening because I'm kind of making fun of you right now because you're a piece of shit. Uh, no shade. No shade. But yeah, we've improved. We're up to 85%, which is great.
Wasn't it Lauren Boebert that had the scandal around her not being able to pass her GED and like
You
somebody
know,
took it for her?
between her hand jobs at Beetlejuice and her gun toting restaurant and her not understanding how Supreme Court ruling works and all that stuff. But I think you're correct. I think the rumor has it she failed her GED like 3 or 4 times. And right when she decided to run, all of a sudden she magically passed it. Like, okay, I
Yeah,
know
but I
the
had 12th
GED
grade
got
level.
harder. Yeah, the GED got harder too. So you're telling me you passed it once you actually had to enable your brain? Like, did you find
Yeah.
a third brain cell to rub against the other two to finally pass it? Like, I don't think so.
And I
Somebody
will
is a little
actually
grifter.
confirm your statement on, back in the late and stuff like that, because it was 99 was I think the year here, at least in Alabama, when they updated to the 12th grade. So up through 98, I know because I dropped out of high school and took my GED because I turned 18 really early in the school year, my senior year, and I just sat around here and I looked and I was like, "Oh my god, I have the itis so bad. If I go ahead and drop out and take my GED, it's on an 8th grade level and I don't have to worry about any of it." I was dumb and I took a bunch of AP classes. I was so burnt out and just
Well,
like,
the itis will get you.
yeah,
Itis will
and
get you
I was
good.
and I just knew that if I kept on, it was gonna stress myself out, and I needed to take a breather. And so I did. Like I went and I turned 18, unenrolled from school, and then literally drove up to the community college on my birthday. Did all this one right after the other on my birthday, and I took the GED. Like took me like I think like an hour and a half, and I like obviously passed because it was 8th grade level. I was like boop, 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 because I was taking like AP classes, so college prep classes and stuff like that. So it was stupid easy, at least for me it was, and I always tested well anyway. And then I got the rest of the year off, and I didn't have to worry about it. But that's back when like nobody cared whether you had a high school diploma or a GED. They really didn't. Like even college didn't care as long as you had something that says you passed high school. They didn't care. So what?
Yeah, they really didn't give a shit back then. If you could do the work, they didn't fucking care a lick. Now it's getting weird, which
Yeah.
it's funny too because that leads to another topic. So the US, obviously, their graduation rate, we've improved a little bit. We're at 85%. Finland, again, higher graduation rate. We shouldn't be surprised at all. A lot of the others, but it's closer, right? We're close. We're not. There's not this huge disparity between the U.S. and other states between a graduation rate. Like Canada's 88 to 90. Japan, we're not even going to talk about. Like all their fucking anime is high school kids. Obviously, somebody there is graduating all the time, which is surprising considering ostensibly how many demons there are in Japan trying to kill high school kids, judging by all their quality anime that I watch. It's shocking how many of them
They
even
get
live
transported
past
to
high
other
school.
worlds, like how do
Right?
they
Stuck
find
in video games for several years. Like, how is this happening? How do you graduate? Like, it's
uh,
fucking. So there's not this huge disparity. But when we get to college, we are actually ahead of the curve. And I think this came about. I can't remember where we started indoctrinating kids into saying you need to spend tens of thousands of dollars for college education, trade stuck. You don't really want your butt crack hanging out doing service work. You need to go to college and get a job. And I think that was probably like the 50s and 60s, maybe, where it started getting really prevalent. Because 50s and 60s, we had a lot of people doing trades. You had shop, you had home ec, you had places where kids were learning this stuff in high school, and they could get a trade job right out of high school.
Well,
And then
Mobile
all of
used
a
to have a
sudden,
trade school, and kids would go over there. There were some kids who were in trade school when I went to high school. Like they
uh,
like around like 11 o'clock, they got on a bus and they went off to trade school for the rest of the day, and then would come back home. And they did like nursing because we did a tour of it. Did like mechanic, nursing, and then something else. And you could start your senior year and go to trade school. I don't know if they still do that. I don't even know if that's still available. But yeah, it didn't have the highest attendance. And that used to be a thing is people would get trades. I would say I think it was like the 80s through the 90s when college became like a big push, a really big thing. And I think a lot of it just had to do with a lot of you had like nerds, all those movies that came out, kind of glorifying college.
nerds.
Yeah, college experience and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people were like, oh yeah, I need to go off to college so I can go have a party and have fun, Animal House and stuff
Yeah,
like
Animal
that.
House convinced me, and then I realized I wasn't popular. So
Exactly, Animal House. And it had this college lifestyle, and that really got really big because normally if people went to college, they were going to be something big. They were going to be a doctor, a lawyer, like something, like they or they went off into like liberal arts, You just didn't really need to have a degree to run like a business. That wasn't like a requirement. If you were going to be at a chain store, you worked your way up the chain. That's how that worked, and that's how you got your experience. I think, general studies became a pretty big thing where, you had more diplomas because, God, there's way more diplomas than there was even early 2000s. All
there's
kinds
so
of
many different
diplomas now.
degrees. Oh, it's fucking
Crazy.
stupid.
Yeah. Like it's absolutely insane. And so through the 2000s, and then I think, was it like 2010, through 2015 is where you saw like most people realized how expensive college was truly becoming. Everybody had like they would decorate their graduation cap, and how many people had like winter's coming, student loans are coming, had like jokes and parodies and stuff like that on how expensive and how much in debt they were about to go into.
Yeah, I'm dreading getting my bill for student loans. I've been in deferment since pre-COVID, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, please, Doge, forget how to turn on student loan repayments or just accidentally fucking erase them because none of you know what the fuck you're doing.
I know,
Just,
script kiddies. Oops, look, we got all
yeah,
this money's gone.
please. I feel like linking him a GitHub repo that'll just like fucking wipe student loan databases and be like, that's what you get.
Hint,
Don't
hint, wink,
believe that
wink,
it
Anon.
stopped DEI payments to fucking Penn State. No, this actually just wipes out student loan for everybody. Good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, but if you look at it, like how many younger kids have a bachelor's, an associate's or higher, or just a bachelor's in general? How many are doing their masters? Like I didn't know that many people like my age that was going into masters, and now it's like all the kids are like in masters and stuff like that. You always had this odd joke of that one person who was like a perpetual student. Oh, they're just like a professional student, and they get kind of shit on because they stay in college for most of their adult life and stuff, just
I've got
taking
a theory
general
about that.
classes. Yeah, but like that, they were the oddball. They were the weird one. Now it's like that's all you hear is people working a 9 to 5 plus they're off in college. I'm like,
I've
couldn't.
got a theory about why they're doing that, why they're staying in school forever.
Hmm.
Because they saw the total of their student loan bill when they got their bachelor's, and they couldn't find a good paying job right out of school. And so they re-enrolled with more loans, so it would put their other loans in deferment, and they're just going to have like a 7-figure loan repayment when they get out.
Are they like a form of billionaire where they beg, borrow, and steal until they die, and they're like, shit, it's not my responsibility anymore?
It's beg, borrow, die, except you just beg and you borrow, and then you stay in school until you die, and then I have no idea how collections handles. They'd be like, Jesus Christ, this person's been in school for 45 years, and they have no fucking W-9s that I can find. If they
Yeah,
never worked a day in their life, be like, man, I took every course at school. What do you
yeah.
mean every course? All of them. I have 9 advanced degrees.
Yeah, it's crazy, and just the books and how expensive it is, it's insane as well. But yeah, it's really crazy how many have compared to what it was when we were younger, and just even people that I knew that had a college education that didn't have some type of like trade, whether they were a hairdresser, a nail tech, or a mechanic, or they just went into business, whether they opened their own business or they just worked at a big box, but they didn't have any formal education. very smart people, and that's not a testament to their intelligence. It's just whether they're stupid or not. No, they're not. They just didn't see the need for it because they weren't going to become a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah, that's fair. And that is not a surprise. I mean, they started this whole narrative of people get liberal arts degrees, bachelor or basket weaving, all this other shit. It's so fucking stupid. I hate it. It opens it up to these weird narratives about people getting these useless degrees. I'm like, look, buddy, I know like 52 people that don't have jobs right now, and they have degrees running the gamut of all these different like STEM fields and all this other shit. But when you take into account like offshore labor and automation and all this other shit, like just even having an advanced degree doesn't necessarily guarantee you a job, especially now that these fucking script kiddies of Doge are just laying off vast swaths of the federal workforce. It's going to be even more saturated. And the funny thing is, what people aren't talking about is we're going to be especially fucked when all these layoffs go through because most of the federal workforce has a bachelor's degree. So that's going to further saturate the market with overqualified people for jobs that other people need.
Just like when the economy crashed, what, in 2008, 2009?
Bush Jr. Yeah.
Fucking yeah. That's exactly what happened is the shit hit the fucking bed and all of a sudden all these high skilled, educated people didn't have a job and they needed to pay their damn mortgage because it was the balloon on it was due and they were about to lose everything. So they were vying for jobs at McDonald's along with somebody who didn't have the education or, just standard front end jobs. And yeah, they would work because some type of money was better than no money. So it was insane. Or my favorite is when I was looking for a job during that time was, well, you're very skilled. We don't want you to leave if you find something better. So they wouldn't hire me. It was damned if you do, damned if you don't,
Yep. And that's problematic, especially because they want you to have a bachelor's now, most everywhere. But in the U.S., state funding per student for public universities has been cut drastically, I think, even since the Reagan days, especially after the 2008 recession. The states cut tons of funding to public schools. So public universities had to increase tuition to compensate because, they got used to that luxury lifestyle. So you got jack up tuition. Our tuition rates have just skyrocketed over the years, and that's caused a huge issue with post-graduation debt, which I don't want to get into quite yet because I think we still want to talk about post-college outcomes. So in the U.S., it is still more common for people with bachelor's degrees, at least, or an associate's, to enter the job market in a reasonable amount of time after they graduate. So the U.S., the unemployment rate for people with a bachelor's is about 2 to 4%, compared to 6 to 9% for people with only a high school education. That kind of matches with the other developed nations, although some of them have better, I don't want to call them safety nets, but some of them have better, I guess our term for it would probably be like a work release type thing where they'll start getting like kind of an internship almost in the degree they're studying for. A lot of other countries have those programs kind of built in to their college experience.
Which they should. I think that's part of it. That should be part of your college education is actual hands-on experience, like whether it be internship or whatever, and it should be paid because you're working. And that's exploitation if you're not paid. But yeah, it should be where you're getting actual validated learning.
Yeah, exactly. So like Germany has an apprenticeship system, and that's even for non-college graduates, which I think is awesome. Japan had a near guaranteed job placement for new graduates until recently. I guess I'm not sure what exactly happened. I'd have to dig into that more, but their university graduates typically have unemployment rates under 4%, which is awesome.
Wow. Yeah.
Finland and Canada, both near the tops, of course, because they have robust social programs and stuff like that to kind of help people get to the point where they can take care of themselves as grown-ups. So from a job placement standpoint, In the US, of course, outcomes vary by institution, by major. But overall, roughly 67% of recent bachelor grads are employed full time within a year of graduating. And out of that number, some people may still be in grad school or just doing part time work while they finish up. In Germany, they have a pretty high rate, but the field of study with all these is a big determinant, right? Like it's easier to get jobs in STEM, probably going to get harder with all the offshore firms hiring people out and the H-1B visas. But STEM and business grads typically have better placement. And that's across all countries. There's nothing really unique about that. And people who graduate in humanities, they may take longer to find jobs. They may enter lower paid entry level jobs initially. The US, obviously, because we are the wealthiest country in the world, typically we have higher starting salaries, which isn't unusual. So I don't think there's anything necessarily interesting about that. I think that's just virtue of us having a higher GDP than anybody else in the world, obviously. So obviously we're going to have typically higher wages, but then everything else costs more and our healthcare sucks and everybody's poor and homeless and our houses cost too much and we're all going to die from stress if bird flu doesn't get us first. Now, if we look at the structure and financing of all these countries, I know we talked on it briefly when we started this episode, but our public education structure is so fucking stupid. It makes no sense. Like K through 12, the fact that it's all based primarily on property tax is so fucking stupid. Like there can be an area in a relatively affluent city that's nothing but crack houses, like a straight up Skid Row. And their school is only going to be like 10 minutes from fucking Beverly Hills High. And the outcomes are going to be wildly different.
Well, yeah.
Because of this archaic, regressive fucking system that we have.
Well, some of it goes back to, redlining, Jim Crow and stuff like that. A lot of these district lines and stuff like that still follow, unfortunately, very racist, classist lines. And that's why schools, the nice area has a school separate from the poors, from the poor people, because they don't want to mix. It'd be a lot different if they commingled. Has nothing to do with class in the population of the children, because you just do what a lot of schools do. They expand, they get bigger. No, they want a separate school because they don't want to commingle and it affect their children.
No, and that makes our country lag behind in everything, because we have these wildly different outcomes in school and we have this disproportionate number of people that grow up poorly educated, unfortunately. And again, through absolutely no fault of their own. It's just they're playing the hand they're dealt, and the hand they dealt sucks.
Well, we've said it many times. How many people do we know that are technically book smart, but common sense just like, nah, miss me, man. Miss me with that shit, walk right on past them. How many people we know that yes, on paper, they're book smart, but in practical application, these people, I'm surprised they can breathe and walk at the same time. I'm like, how do you survive? How do you adult? How do you in life keep failing upwards? Because when I talk to you, I feel myself, my intelligence just dropping, just plummeting to the ground. And I say, obviously, this all in my head, but...
Well, don't forget, we also have the Lauren Boeberts and the Marjorie Taylor Greens that are nice.
Yes. Jesus. And you just like, you cannot equate the two together, that is, and then you look and see where they grew up. And like you said earlier, a lot of it is just really driven by test results, making sure they get the tests, they get the federal funding put in. So there's no critical thinking skills whatsoever. They weren't challenged to think outside the box, to be creative, because there was no time for that. It was all just make sure you can pass this test so we get our federal income. And that's it. And that's all they've ever done in life is just they've passed tests. But it's in one ear, out the other,
And then you grow up believing in Jewish face lasers and thinking that we can control hurricanes and direct them towards red districts.
Hey, they totally
because you were the child that should have been left behind, and instead you got elected to Congress.
Yeah. And, like I said, good intentions there, just poor execution, specifically by red states who just did not understand this side. They missed the plot on this one. They went, No Child Left Behind, awesome. And they just went off in a completely different direction with it. And yes, it harms other people. But yeah, when you talk about, the how successful people are and stuff like that, I can't tell you how many people come out of college and there are no jobs right now. It's very hard. And then they get hit. You only have like, 6 months after you get out of college, and then the first payment comes due?
1 year.
1
1 year.
year? Yeah.
1 year. And then
Just
if
think
you're
about like
unemployed, you can apply for a hardship deferment. There's a couple ways to kind of extend it out. But yeah, the toll's coming.
yeah, the toll's coming. And then at that point in time, you have other expenses. So if you were living on campus, let's just say you were living on campus. Well, you can't live on campus anymore. So now you got to go like figure out like how you're going to save up and get rent. Because obviously you probably don't have the money to buy a house, So you got rent. So that's a deposit plus moving plus, and then you got to start your life. So probably don't have a lot of furniture. It's a whole new set of stresses, and we have compounded it. So I was doing the math. There's this person online that was trying to be, you can tell they're very young, very kind of smarmy, and believe it or not, in the same state, in Alabama, in the north part, and trying to tell people that like there's no correlation between society, like our growth, like someone's personal growth or like how they, like their health and their wealth and everything else with the disparity in wealth. Like those things don't go hand in hand. So you being poor
What
does
the
not
fuck?
affect you. I know. I tore this person up, and I was like, because somebody else, was like obviously somebody about our age was like, in the 80s, it was much easier to live. Our dollar stretched further, and this person was trying to fight back. They had some stupid like pictures. They were one single set of data, one point of data, and they were trying to correlate shit off of a fucking picture off of crap. And I'm like, first of all, education missed your ass. So first of all, you cannot use data like that. It's not how data's used. When you look at big pictures like that and to see difference in like how our economics are different from the 80s till now, what's changed, all that, so you're going to have to use a lot of different data set points. But I can tell you right now, they're correct. Our dollar's worth a lot more back in the 80s than it is now. You could do a lot more with that dollar because you didn't have the level of inflation and you didn't have this, disparity in wealth. I said the average, we were talking about college. 4 years and living on campus, like in the early 80s, was like $9,000 total, not a year, total.
Yeah, 4 times more expensive now.
Yeah, now it's like $12,000. Like that's the give or take. That's like from the lowest. But if you're gonna live on campus, about $12,000 a year. So it's almost actually like probably closer to around $50,000 for 4 years. 4 years living on campus. So there, that's the first big one. And I was like, the average single person brought home, with a, I said, even just a high school education. Let's just say I didn't even give them a college education, high school education, but the average person brought home, after taxes, I think it was on $14,000 a year. That was like average. IRS, like tax returns, that was the average, single person household. And I said, a brand new car, the nicest car on the market you could get, not a luxury, but just like standard, like real decent car. Was it a Chevelle? I forgot what it was. But it was like $6,000 for that car. Like you could buy a whole ass car and still have money left over from a year's salary. Nowadays, that's not a thing. Like most of the time, your car can cost just as much as your yearly salary. You could buy a car and go to college for almost what you would make in a whole last year at a full-time job. And then I was trying to explain to them, like even if they bought a house with 13% interest, because that's how much interest was on a mortgage back then, for an FHA. So that was an FHA loan. That was before PMI, all that fun stuff. That was late 90s. That stuff happened. I was like, if you got a FHA loan, you'd pay up to like $75 or $750 a month. The average cost of a home, I think, was like 60, between like 48 and 60,000. You got $750 a month for that mortgage, and stuff like that. But if they had a standard loan, like a general loan, not an FHA one, it was like 2%. Normal, like what most people see, should see when they go to their bank. around 2%. I said, that's $250. I said, if you're making like 13, 14, you're bringing home 13, $14,000, and your payment to live somewhere is like $250. I was like, you're winning. I was like, your power bill is probably only 50, $60 a month. Your water, sewer, your utilities probably like $10, $15. Because I remember when it went up $20 in the 90s, my parents freaked out. What's this? At the garbage company. So yes, there was a way different cost of living than there is now. Rent nowadays on like an apartment rented like 10 years ago is like I think it was like $700 a month, and now it's like $1,700 a month.
Yeah, it's fucking stupid. It's ridiculous. And for like 100-year-old fucking World War II bunker. I'm like,
and
what the fuck?
I don't make the difference in that. Like renting a place, like a 1-bedroom apartment, would have been like $400 back in the 80s. Like, it was stupid cheap. And you didn't see a big jump in rental prices either from like the 80s up through even like the early 2000s. It wasn't until after 2000s, like after the economy crashed and then everybody lost their home and they had to go rent, that all of a sudden all these apartments were like, let's hike it up. And then rental houses, that's when that became a big thing in like 2008, 2009, up through like, because all the homes went into default. So all these investment firms bought them up and then they flipped them into rentals. And that's where it became its own little like circle jerk of prices going up. So yeah, these guys coming out of college, I can't imagine coming out of college like 60, 70, 80,000 plus. And if you're a doctor or a lawyer, $150,000, $200,000 in debt, and then try to figure out like what the hell you're going to do in life.
Yeah, I was trying to catch up on Daredevil because the new series starts on Disney Plus, I think, next week. I was rewatching season 3 again, and he makes a comment that he's trying to pay off $300,000 in student debt. And old Matt Murdock was a public defender. Mm-hmm. Public defenders aren't making what our lawyers pay. There's no fucking way.
No.
So try to imagine like working for the good of society, but you owe your fucking like third rate law school $300,000, and you're like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
And how am I going to pay this shit off?
Exactly. 100. And if we would, and I know people are always like, oh, freedom, we can't have all these regulations. Actually, having regulations, having a national system would provide so much freedom and so much debt relief. And it would even out the playing field for everyone involved. Because I can tell you what's going to happen. Those little Nepo babies are just going to hop over and go to Europe somewhere. And that's fine. Let the rest of us be educated and be at a even keel and enjoy it and not be left out, because that's the problem. There's not an easy path, and our teachers are not supported. Our school systems are not supported. So yeah. And then you got your pay rates here, like getting out of college and stuff like that. Job placement. There's not anything really good. Like we don't have the same level. They don't help you in college. Go find a job. They throw you some job fair stuff and good luck. Godspeed. I mean, obviously Ivy League schools probably have an advantage there because, they're well connected. They're typically legacies and stuff like that. That's a lot different.
Who from the bag of dicks that I handed you that you sucked.
Exactly.
That's the famous. Who all's dicks are in that bag? They gonna get me a career?
Yeah, exactly. But you're talking about the everyday standard American who just, is trying their best to live that American dream. That unemployment rate, I mean, it's tough. And it's tougher when the market's saturated because it's unstable, which it has been since 2008, 2009. It has never fully recovered. And because we won't let it, we keep falling down, and it's getting tougher year after year because we refuse to regulate these things, thinking that it's going to cost us more money, when in the end of the day, it's already costing us a lot of money. Why not regulate it so we can get an even price and it stops skyrocketing?
Are you trying to tell me that giving billionaires more money is not actually going to pay off for me at the end of the day?
Absolutely not. No, because they could care less if you live or die. They're like coin clickers. They remind me of a coin clicker game where they're just sitting there clicking, and we're the thing that they're clicking, and they're watching their numbers rise up. And it's like a contest who can click the fastest and the most people. And they don't care what the outcome is for the things that they're clicking on. They don't care. All they care about is that magic number at the top and that who's the richest in the world. They don't do anything with those dollars. They just they sit there and they just accumulate, and they just keep getting bigger, and they puff their chests out at each other, and that's it. That's all they do with it.
They do like the puffy chesting. They have fun. Did you know that on a kind of related topic, did you know we are at $1.77 trillion in student loan debt?
That does not surprise me at all, because the job market sucks. I don't care what kind of numbers they have on unemployment and all that. That's part of the working class's rub, is because all these companies out there, they have incentives for putting up jobs, but they're not actually like incentivized to hire those jobs. So they're incentivized to post jobs. So they're ghost jobs, and they will. You'll find them on LinkedIn all the time. They'll have that job up there for like 6-7 months. They've decided they're not going to hire for it. And sometimes it's even just to appease the employees, because their employees are like, oh my God, we're so stressed out. We're overworked, and you laid off a bunch of people. We have way too much work. We literally can't get this done. Sometimes it's to appease shareholders. Oh, look, see, we're hiring, wank, wank. But we're not really hiring, wank, wank. It's a facade. It's a veneer of prosperity when it's not really. And the problem is that people, they will get hired. They work there for a few months, and then they get riffed. So laid off, mass layoffs. Then they find a job maybe 2-3 months down the road, and then they get hired again. Not enough. And then sometimes they get package compensations. They can't apply for unemployment. That's how they pull those unemployment numbers. So there's this large portion of people who don't pull unemployment. They don't get counted. And then it's the same thing. They apply to hundreds of jobs almost daily. Like they're stressed out, like freaking out online. And, they can't find anything, and then they finally get something. They're there for another 2-3 months, get laid off again. And it's not that they're bad workers. It's just, this is the MO of large corporations. It's like they use layoffs to hire seasonally. Like when we have work on demand, instead of hiring temps and doing things right and letting the person know this job's temporary, they're here for a specific project, like freelancers. No, they don't want to pay those prices. So they hire normal employees, and then they just lay them off within a month or two. Because they deem it cheaper.
The dicks in their bag all belong to shareholders and board members. That's pretty much their bag full of dicks.
That, and they all want their $1 million, multi-million-dollar payout. So bonuses, and can't do that if you have to give raises and create new job titles. So yeah, and so you have this crazy, just up and down. And I gotta say, it's been like this. It really started getting really bad at COVID. They took advantage of it and did mass layoffs and said, oh, it's a knee jerk. And then they hired some people, and then they started like going, oh, we can do this. We can start doing these rolling layoffs. And
the bad thing about COVID was the PPP loans that were supposed to get them through COVID without having to do layoffs. And because there was no enforcement arm, they fucking laid everybody off anyway and just pocketed the money, and they got all those loans forgiven. Because going back to our earlier point, CEOs are fucking psychopaths.
That and half of our Congress, because I know the GOP took a lot of advantage of that.
Oh, yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. Where was the fucking oversight committee on their fucking PPP loans that never got paid back?
Exactly.
Or the ones that own businesses considered essential, and they still took out fucking PPP loans even though they didn't have to close.
Yeah. And I can tell you right now, for how much the student loans are, like even just the monthly minimum payment on these loans, having to pay back $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 plus, how much people are paid in like their first time, like as an entry level, it is not comparable to what they owe and how much cost of living is. Because a lot of people just stay at home. Like how many adults do you see still at home? They live with their parents who are older than us. They're like, I'd like to call them infant boomers. They're either really old Gen X or they're infant boomers. I guess they're But they had children at our age in their 40s, like idiots. And so now they have somebody he's 25, 30, and they still live at home. They still live at home because it's so much cheaper than moving out. And they may stay there for the Lord knows. And I don't blame millennials, the younger millennials, or the next generation. Is that Gen Z? Yeah, because then it's Alpha. No, Alpha is the real young ones. So Gen Z, the ones that are in their 20s now, right?
I guess they are. I can keep up.
I know. I think they're in their 20s now. But yeah, they're it's crazy. Like, I wouldn't, unless your home life is absolutely abhorrent. It's too damn expensive to try to live out, on your own, or even with some roommates, because then you have to rely on those people to be reliable. And the economy is just too crazy for anybody, even in their best intentions, to be technically reliable.
No, and even though I've got a job, I still have a backup plan for student loans. I am going to take pictures of my butthole and put them on the internet for pay. I will charge people, and I'm going to be like that guy on Netflix who just gave sperm samples to 87 different hospitals and has 100 some odd kids running around.
Go get you like 15 different identities, and that's all you do all day is just butthole and sperm. But fantastic.
It's gonna look smaller when I'm done because I'm gonna rubbed off so many layers of skin. It's not gonna be girthy at all. It's just gonna be a toothpick, wispy, spit and dust penis at the end of it, and I'll have made like 1% of payments on my student loan at that point.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the oh my God, the interest rate on those two is just insane. So yeah, and and we're moving on into debt, where we're talking about it right now. The interest rates on, loans and what happens if you default on them, and even the privatized ones. So the way they have it cut up, a lot of times you'll get like federal, but those cut off at a certain point. Like, you can only get so much in federal, and then you have to supplement with private. And those things are worse than payday loan places. Like, their interest
Sally
rates
Mae is
are
a cruel bitch.
Yeah. And absolutely, what was her, Betsy DeVos? What was her name?
Betsy DeVos, the Danish
DeVos,
psychopath.
Yeah, that one. But didn't she run a
I don't know what the
censure?
fuck she was.
Yeah.
I can't remember. She wanted to charter school everything because she's fucking evil personified.
Yeah, don't get me started on magnet charter schools. Yeah, she just absolute, just like worst thing ever. But yes, those loans are predatory, and you need them because your professor gets a new volume of the same damn book. You got to buy this $600 89th edition book. One, your books don't have any resale value, which I think is just like, that needs to be regulated. That would solve a lot of issues right there. But, stop having them come out with a new damn book every year. Have an ebook, update your ebook, sell it for a set price, and that's it. Or it just comes bundled in with the class. My God, you're already paying like $9,000 a year for this damn, for all the classes. Might as well bundle that in. We live in 2025.
Right.
We don't need a paper book.
If I remember right, my school wasn't that bad. Penn State had a decent way. Now, it only worked for like 1 or 2 books a semester max. I mean, I always ended up with at least like one brand new book for fucking $500 or whatever it was. I would say on average, every semester, I want to say I probably spent about $500 to $600 just on books, which is fucking ridiculous. I have 6,000 books on my Kindle. They were all free. Good Kindle Unlimited. Like, come on. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, what makes textbooks so valuable?
It's bullshit. It is a scam, and that's another way that they just kind of get you, I mean, I never understood why they charge so much for the book.
Because they can.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. Because they can. And they're not, and they needed a new edition every year, so you couldn't go back and resell your book. So it could be resold, to like the next year, and then maybe like every few years. Oh no, that was day of, like a long time ago. So your books are worth nothing by the time it's like a car. You drive the new car off the lot, it's now worth like a lot less than it was.
Depreciation.
Yeah,
Yeah, depreciation.
depreciation.
And that's the thing. Like, sure, there's some fields where your textbooks are probably going to update pretty frequently. Like, I imagine medical texts are going to update pretty frequently because there's always new treatments and shit coming out. But your baseline stuff, like your foundational shit, that's not going to update every year. Like, foundationally, you should be able to buy a used fucking book for Algebra 1. I think that doesn't change year over year.
No.
Algebra is still algebra. It's been that way for fucking thousands of years at this point. No, that structurally, that's got to change. Yeah, books are a huge burden that they need to address.
Well, it just
nobody wants to spend
compounds
an
on the
extra 12
debt
grand.
because if you have 4 years and you got to come out anywhere between $5 and let's say $1,200, that adds up. That adds a good point, especially with how expensive these things. And most of that stuff is actually what people end up having to finance through those extra loans. It is books and you know, and then maybe that like odd class that costs a little bit more, you know, and we don't allow for federal loans to cover those things, and that amount should go up, you know, and as well. But I'm also at the mindset of that, you know, a bachelor should be covered for everybody, and that needs to be like paid for by the government, you know.
It should be fully covered.
Yeah.
Because
it should be a federal level. Schools should be federal. All schools should be federal.
Well, Pell Grants are means tested. So even if you make some money, it's really hard to get a Pell Grant. I think this most recent one is the most recent time I got a Pell Grant. And I only got 2 of them. And it was a far more expensive education. And there were only 2 semesters where I qualified. And the other ones I didn't. And then there was the 1 semester where I qualified for the holy shit, you're fucking poor. Take this money so you don't have to drop out. Which I actually thought was pretty cool. I actually didn't think that was something that colleges did, because what our country also fails to do is educate us on how colleges provide financial aid and all the different means at your disposal to get aid. And the one from the school is actually at a relatively decent interest rate. It's not backbreaking or anything. In fact, I think I already paid it off, actually.
Yeah.
I don't remember having to pay for it anymore. So I can deal with that. That I'm relatively okay with. But the rest of it, it's absurd. But despite all that, onto our last topic, despite the high cost of our education, we do have a higher ROI for completing higher education. Our bachelor's degree holders still earn about 56% more than high school graduates across OECD countries. And the premium in the US is slightly higher. So over a lifetime, a US college grad is estimated to earn roughly $1 million more than a high school grad.
I think that's very true now. I would say if we rolled this back 20 years ago, I would say no.
Oh, these are recent. Yeah, these are recent.
Yeah.
These are, I only do research past 5 years.
Jobs require. If they didn't require it and allowed you work from the bottom up through validated learning, practical application, and stuff like that, I would take somebody who's worked in that job 20 years over somebody who just fresh out of college. Because I have people on my team. Tools. Yeah, they know the tools. I don't need to know they graduated college. I could care less. I know that they can do the job, and that's how it should be. But that's me too, because I like hands-on learning, and college just it's teaching you how to pass a test, and you're never going to use really a lot of what you learn there. You're going to get taught when you get your first job. You're going to be told, forget everything. This is how you're going to learn, because this is the job and this is how you have to learn. And these are the things you have to know for this job. But
you'll have written a 4-page paper on Dante's Inferno as part of getting your degree.
Oh, that's lovely.
That'll show them that you know what the fuck you're doing. Yeah, real world experience is good. I actually
write it for me.
Don't say that. They'll find you. You'll talk to a lot of people in management who, we might be pivoting to see a turn in how that works, because you'll talk to a lot of managers these days that are running into issues in interviews where they find people with all the relevant education, because that's what HR puts on all the applications, is that, hey, we want a bachelor's, blah, blah, blah. But they don't know dick about their field because they've never done it.
Pretty on paper. But actual functional knowledge is 0 to none. And us old crones where I didn't, last time I went to school was like early 2000s. I haven't done any other formal education, but I do like learning. I do like educating myself, and I learn a lot from online. I go do Coursera and stuff like that because I'm self-motivated and driven. Yeah, I'd probably be one of the weird ones on the opposite side where made more money than somebody with my education experience. probably would have ever made just through sheer grit and grind and stuff. However, I would say my path has probably been a lot longer than somebody who would have had a formal education. They would have had the advantage of kind of hop skipping up the chain faster. I still got up the chain, just not probably as fast.
Well, we're also old AF, as the
Yeah.
kids are saying these days. The verdict's out as to whether we are, in fact, skibbity. But
No,
we are definitely
excuse me, I do
old.
not have Ohio Riz. I am not. I have all the Riz.
I don't know anything that you just said.
You gotta stay up with the lingo. I'm telling you, it's interesting. I'm not sure exactly what a skivvy is. It seems to be very universal in its use case, but I do know it embarrasses the hell out of the youngest. So when I say it, so it is absolutely fantastic.
That's the trick to making them not say those insanely stupid words anymore, is to pretend that you think they're cool and start using them.
Yeah, I would say though, like I like numbers, I like data, but ROI is like, yes, they may make more money, but how much of that $1,000,000 are they going to pay back to that student loan? Because there's people who've been paying on their student loan for 10 years and they've only paid off like $5,000 of it. And there was this lady, I mean, she was in tears and she's like, I've been paying on this thing for 10 years, like a lot, and even extra every month. And she's only paid off like 7,000 of it and still owes like 60,000. Or no, she owed more. It was something crazy.
That's the thing that's crazy, is because the interest rate's so high, when you're on some of these like income-based repayment plans, you're barely paying enough to cover the interest every month. And so the principal keeps growing.
Yeah. And she's
so
like,
you're
how
paying
do
it
I
for 10
owe
years
more?
and you owe more.
Yeah. And she's like,
and nobody explains that. Nobody explains like interest rates to people. And that's why these kids going into school that are 18 and they sign up, take these tens of thousands of dollars in loans, don't fucking understand what they're getting into.
They don't. Yeah. Well, the
It's all
brain
predatory.
isn't fully, completed until 25 anyway. It's one of those
I'm
things where I don't
45
feel
and I
like
still have my
baby.
doubts about mine.
45, yeah, that's true. I still feel like a child sometimes. But like that's why I don't think they should be going off to war at that young of age, signing into big contracts, making lifelong, like permanent, like damaging choices like that. But yeah, that's with that ROI. That's pretty on paper that, yeah, they'll make $1,000,000 more, but they're also paying back so much more. And financially, they are probably under like so much pressure. Can you imagine like the things that they have to accept at their job that they can't just go, you know what, fuck you, and walk out, because they know they have that student sitting there that's like $7,000 a month. And, they're just going to keep spinning their wheels and then trying to find another job. Like, how much fear you have to live in every day with that kind of thing looming over your back. That's a huge debt.
Will tell you the same thing I tell everybody else. If I ever win the lottery, I will still work, but you will see a big shift in my attitude. And I don't know how long I would be able to keep working with that attitude shift.
You're going to be like Tom at work. You don't really have to, but you just come in because you want to.
Yeah.
So you don't really interact with anyone. And you're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck face. This is the amount of effort you're going to get out of me.
Yeah. We've got to do something. Obviously, this takes a back burner to with what's going on with Trump in the office. But I did want to pivot real quick and go back to Finland. I'm glad you're talking about them. Did you hear they're signing like a petition to like their government to buy California? They're trying to raise the money for it.
God,
if they do, we're moving.
Yeah, I will straight up go back to California.
Yeah.
I love California. You can't beat the weather.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Please bring all your beautiful. Oh, it's Danes. That's what it was. It was in Finland. It's Danish.
Oh, that's nice. The Danes.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's funny. I know it's off topic and I know we're probably over, but I think it's hilarious that Trump keeps saying, oh, Canada's going to be our 51st state. They'll have way lower taxes and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't think they want to die like 5 years earlier and have to pay for the privilege of doing it.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Quebec, that's where all the sassy ones live. That's, if you ever want to like meet the sassy Canadians, it's Quebec.
No, I deal with people from Quebec at work, and I choose not to engage with them in real life ever.
They like could you imagine like he goes and reads like their laws, like their provincial laws, and realizes like one of their first few laws is like you will respect the language. In other words, it's Canadian French. That is their number one
You will
language.
speak the français.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like you do not like you lead with French, they're Canadian French, and you expect Canadian French back, and you better fucking learn it. And English is like kind of like if we have to, but you better have Canadian French first. So you better learn that shit.
I deal with their regulators and their assholes.
You should say the word tabernacle or tabernacle. Say tabernacle next time.
Absolutely not.
Why?
Because I'm never talking to them again.
Yeah. Well,
They're
next
that
time it
big of a
makes you
prick.
mad, just go tabernacle. And you gotta do it with a French accent. But yes, it's like it's like
Tabernacle.
exactly. Yes, it's their explicit their cuss word. It's a cuss word for them. It's I think it's pulled from Catholic Church, if I'm not mistaken. And it means like holy shit or holy fuck. Yeah.
When I was in high school, we asked our French teacher if we could quiz her on whether or not something we had come up with was a dirty word, and it was boys mon posterior, I think, which was supposed to mean kiss my ass. Let's translate it. I think I'm messing the first word up, but we all got in trouble because evidently it means something far, far worse when you translate it to the French version, and it was not kiss my ass. I never learned to this day what it meant because she would never told us because she had more respect for herself as a teacher than we did, I guess. But yeah, I try not to mess with translation anymore at that point.
Yeah.
I think we are super over. I think that's a good spot to end it. But I tried to give us bullet points this time and outline it, and it just didn't go as well as I thought.
But I think we followed like a linear thing, much better than last time.
We did. We only rambled a little bit for a very long time, but it was only a couple side things. They just lasted longer than normal. But no, it's a good topic, and I blame it on how fucked up the system is. It probably wouldn't have had to have been so long if it wasn't so colossally broken. So it's not our inability to stay on topic that made us run long. It was just how broken our fucked up systems are. That's what I'm blaming it on.
Our minds are not right. Then I think that's the biggest thing too, is we need to stop doing this thing where we hate on each other and don't think that we're not worth it. There's a lot of self-hate here. Everybody's worth it. I don't care if they make $1 billion or $1 or $0. Everybody deserves the same chance, the same opportunity, and it should be covered. We are a rich fucking nation. It should all be covered. Nobody's taking advantage. You live here. You're part of our society. Guess what? You're giving back somehow. So everybody should get it. A rising tide will always raise all boats. Stop looking over at your person next to you going, I don't think they should get it. None of your fucking business. Mind your business. Just worry about yourself. And let it all rise together. Stop trying to shit on other people and hurt yourself by shitting on other people. Because guess what? You're just shitting in your own fucking yard too. So that's it. I think we ended on a good note. And yes, there's a lot to fix.
Yep. On that note, after we have fully depressed anybody listening, keep your chins up. Maybe one day it'll get better. Who knows? But you guys take care, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Have a good night.